Hi, and welcome to tonight's episode of Katie Merchant's Bedtime Tales. I'm Katie Merchant. I recently decided to start this because I think the world could use some happy tales right before bedtime. So if that's something that you would like, please tune in and listen. I hope to update a couple times a week, but no promises. We are here as we are. But here's tonight's episode. Aubergine by Katie Merchant. The metallic whir of a flipping coin was audible over the whole crowd. It landed with a muted plunk on the upheld palm of the unofficial referee. He covered it without a glance and looked between the tall brunette and the short blonde, who were busy glaring daggers into one another. "Heads or tails?" his gruff tone demanded. "Tails!" the tall brunette in question called. The blonde had started this whole debacle, and by rules of engagement, Antigone, the brunette, was awarded the initial call. Baisa, the shorter of the two, scowled at her, and the rest of the village watched the referee. "Heads!" The referee looked towards Baisa and held her arm up. Half the crowd screamed in delight, as the other half booed. All began to move about the end of the vegetable competition. Baisa tried to make her smile look delicate as she took the prize money, but Antigone saw the deceit in the corner of her eyes. "She cheated!" Antigone cried, pointing an accusatory finger at the shorter woman. "At a coin toss?" half the crowd yelled back. Antigone, visibly deflated, kicked a large patch of dirt, some of which landed in her eye. The crowd's disbelief turned into laughter as people began to disperse from the convention. Antigone watched Baisa pick up her prized eggplant and huffed with displeasure while rubbing the dirt from her eyes. Antigone knew she was right, but she had no way to prove it. A crow hopped beside her as she marched back to her own aubergine, wondering how Baisa could pull off duplicating her fruit. The judge had been stunned because, point for point, their fruit had been identical. "What just happened?" Antigone asked the crow. It blinked back at her, and she tossed it a pumpkin seed. It accepted the token and continued to march along beside her. There was a small crowd around her table. "I don't understand what just happened," her mother barked at her from the seat behind the table. "That witch caused some trickery. I watched you grow this for months. How did she have one that looked exactly the same, down to the scar?" The way her mother questioned her, it seemed as if she should know. Antigone held her hands out and upward towards the heavens, not knowing how to answer and wishing she did. The crow hopped over to the table, and her mother tried to shoo it away. It pecked her hand, then flew to the top of the eggplant. "Not all is as it seems," the bird cawed, and shoved her not quite prized fruit to the ground. It split as it hit the cobbled street from the lofty display. The bird took off, flapping with wild frenzy, and disappeared into the city with ease. "Witchcraft!" her mother shouted, while pointing a very crooked finger at the split thing that should have been eggplant. It had not split the way an eggplant should have. Instead of a dull splatter, it had gone thunk and cracked. Antigone picked up the shell of what she had been certain had been her would-be prized fruit. Daily she had tended to it, observed it as it went from a tiny white spear to a massive purple delectable. She could not, for the life of her, understand how Baisa made a copy. She picked up the fruit, holding back a choked tear as she noticed something red between the fracture. She tugged a delicate red velvet pouch free from the fissure. Even more confused, she shook the vessel and heard something else rattling around. The small crowd that had gathered to watch her examine her strange not fruit went silent. Antigone passed the pouch to her mother, and the gathering all cheered as she stood tall and raised the vessel above her head. throwing it as hard as she could against the ground. It shattered like ceramic. Antigone brushed the rubble away to expose a rolled up piece of paper stamped shut with a red wax seal. She broke the binding and unrolled the paper to read. Thank you kindly for tending to my seed this season. I'm sorry to have inconvenienced you and your ritual. Please accept this trinket as my thanks. I found it while tending your yard. Bisa and now Sahil of the third hill over. Antigone held the note to her chest, still trying to comprehend what had just happened. Her mother had made a strange gasping noise behind her, which made her swivel around to see her mother had tipped the contents of the strange bag out. In her palm was a giant emerald, roughly the size and shape of a potato. The women whooped with glee and embraced. The crowd all demanded answers. The sooner you pack these veggies into the cart and wheel them to the house, the faster we can get to the tavern to discuss, Antigone's mother announced to grumbling voices. First round's on us. The murmurs changed to hurrahs, and people eagerly picked up for them as Antigone shared the letter. Ah, her mother said, once she finished taking in the words. This must be the brownies that's been accepting my gifts. Wait, is that the funny table you set up behind the kitchen window? I thought you kept leaving dishes there. No, I was leaving offerings, and always hoped that the being enjoying the snack would stop by for a chat. They never did. Thought it was quite rude. Goes to show. Her mother handed the note back, and they followed the boisterous group back to their house. Antigone rolled the note tightly and noticed a postscript previously missed in their haste. P.S. I really love your mother's shortbread cookies, and Tolliver loves your roasted pumpkin seeds. Antigone pulled a few seeds from her pocket and dropped them to the ground. Moments later, the black outline of a crow hopped to the ground to scoop up the precious morsels. Tolliver? Antigone asked. The crow cawed. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, or whatever it is that you do to get the word out there. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful night. Sleep well.